The day had been long, and Marcus Howell was finally heading home after a grueling international business trip. The airport buzzed with the usual chaos, loud announcements over the intercom, families rushing to catch their flights, and tired travelers dragging suitcases behind them. Marcus moved through it all at his own pace, calm and unhurried. He wasn't in a rush. His flight had landed earlier than expected, and he decided to take his time walking through the terminal. After all, this place held special meaning for him. It wasn't just another airport, it was a project close to his heart. Years ago, Marcus had founded a nonprofit organization dedicated to improving public spaces. Through donations from his successful tech ventures, he'd raised over $1 billion for various projects worldwide. One of those projects was right here, the very terminal he now walked through. With its sleek design, modern amenities, and vibrant art installations, it stood as a testament to what could be achieved when communities came together. Every step Marcus took reminded him of the countless hours spent planning, negotiating, and collaborating to make this space a reality. This wasn't just an airport terminal, it was a symbol of progress, inclusivity, and opportunity. As Marcus strolled, he let his mind wander. He thought about the scholarships his foundation provided to underprivileged students, many of whom were pursuing careers in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, STEM. Some of these students might even work in airports like this, one someday, contributing to innovations that made travel safer and more efficient. He smiled at the idea, feeling proud of the impact his efforts had created. But his reverie was short-lived. Near the exit, TSA agent Greg Monroe stood near the security checkpoint, scanning the crowd with sharp eyes. Today had not been kind to him. The line for security had stretched far beyond usual limits, thanks to a delayed international flight. Passengers grew impatient, complaining loudly about wait times. A child spilled juice on the floor, causing a minor commotion as staff scrambled to clean it up. And then there were the constant reminders from his supervisor to stay alert and move things along faster. By the time Marcus entered his field of vision, Monroe's patience was paper-thin. Marcus didn't notice Monroe at first. He was too busy admiring the terminal's architecture, the way natural light poured through the glass ceiling, illuminating the polished floors below. He walked slowly, savoring the moment. To anyone watching, he seemed relaxed, almost meditative. But to Monroe, who was already on edge, Marcus's leisurely pace felt like an affront. Why was this man moving so slowly? Didn't he know how busy the terminal was? Was he deliberately trying to cause trouble? "Hey, you there," Monroe called, out pointing toward Marcus. His voice carried across the crowded hall, cutting through the hum of conversations and rolling luggage wheels. Heads turned, curious about the source of the disturbance. Marcus stopped mid-step, surprised by the sudden attention. He looked around, wondering if someone else was being addressed. When he realized the agent was speaking to him, he turned, slightly, meeting Monroe's gaze. "Yes?" Marcus asked, his tone polite but questioning. He wasn't sure why the agent was singling him out. Had he done something wrong? Monroe, meanwhile, felt his frustration boiling over. The man's slow walk had triggered something deep inside him, a mix of irritation and bias he hadn't fully acknowledged until now. Without thinking, Monroe snapped, "Pick up the pace, you're holding everyone up." The words hung in the air, heavy and accusatory. Marcus blinked, taken aback. Holding everyone up? That couldn't be right. There was no line forming behind him, no crowd waiting to pass through. In fact, the area around him was relatively empty. So why was this agent yelling at him? For a brief moment, Marcus considered arguing, pointing out the lack of urgency in his situation. But instead, he chose to remain calm. Raising his hands, slightly in a gesture of peace, he said, "I'm sorry if I caused any inconvenience, I'll speed up." But Monroe wasn't ready to let it go. Embarrassed by the stares of onlookers and determined to assert authority, he pressed further. "You can't just loiter around here like you own the place," he said, his voice louder this time. The comment stung. Loitering? Like he owned the place? If only Monroe knew the truth, that Marcus did have a stake in this terminal, albeit indirectly. The irony wasn't lost on Marcus, but he kept his composure. Instead of responding, he simply nodded and continued walking, leaving Monroe standing there fuming. Unbeknownst to either man, this encounter would set off a chain reaction neither could have anticipated. Cameras clicked and phones recorded as passengers captured the exchange. Within minutes, snippets of the confrontation began circulating online, sparking outrage and debate. Meanwhile, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that something larger was at play here. As he stepped outside into the crisp evening air, he wondered whether this moment would become a turning point, not just for him, but for others as well. Little did he know, the story was only beginning. The encounter between Marcus and Agent Monroe might have ended there, fading into the background of a busy day at the airport, if not for one crucial factor: technology. In today's world, where nearly everyone carries a smartphone in their pocket, moments like this don't stay private for long. As Marcus walked away, several passengers who had witnessed the exchange began recording videos or snapping photos. Some even approached Marcus directly, asking if he was okay. The atmosphere around them shifted from casual observation to palpable tension. One young woman, holding her phone steady as she filmed, muttered under her breath, "Why is he yelling at him like that?" Another traveler chimed in, shaking his head. "It's always something, isn't it? You can't just exist without someone finding a reason to make it about race." Conversations erupted among bystanders, some defending Monroe's actions as standard protocol for TSA agents, while others condemned what they saw as unnecessary aggression. What started as a personal interaction quickly became a public spectacle. Within hours, clips of the incident flooded social media platforms. Hashtags like respect and dignity and the airport racism trended across Twitter and Instagram. People dissected every word, every gesture, every facial expression captured on camera. The video showed Marcus walking calmly, minding his own business, before being singled out by an agitated agent. To many viewers, the situation seemed clear-cut. A black man moving peacefully through a public space was targeted unfairly because of bias. Comments poured in, ranging from empathetic support for Marcus to harsh criticism of Monroe's behavior. Meanwhile, Monroe returned to his post after the confrontation, trying to shake off the lingering unease. He didn't understand why everyone was making such a big deal out of nothing. Sure, he'd raised his voice, but wasn't that part of the job? Keeping order, maintaining control, those were responsibilities he took seriously. Yet as he glanced around, he noticed the wary looks from passengers and the whispered conversations. It dawned on him that something had changed. Word was spreading, and it wasn't in his favor. By the end of his shift, Monroe received a call from his supervisor. "We need to talk," the voice on the other end said tersely. When he arrived at the office, he found himself facing a barrage of questions. How had things escalated so quickly? Why had he felt the need to confront Marcus in such a manner? And most importantly, did he realize how his actions were being perceived? Monroe struggled to defend himself, insisting that he'd only been doing his duty. But deep down, doubt crept in. Had he overreacted? Was there more to the story than he'd initially realized? As news of the incident gained traction online, Marcus found himself thrust into the spotlight. Reporters reached out requesting interviews. Social media users praised him for handling the situation with grace and dignity. Friends and colleagues messaged him, offering words of encouragement. At first, Marcus tried to ignore the attention. He didn't want to be seen as a victim or a hero. He simply wanted to move past the unpleasantness of the moment. However, as the days passed, he began to see an opportunity, a chance to address larger issues that often went unspoken. During a quiet evening at home, Marcus sat in his study, scrolling through the endless stream of comments and articles about the incident. One particular thread caught his eye. A user wrote, "If we keep treating people differently based on assumptions, we'll never break the cycle of mistrust." The comment resonated deeply with Marcus. Over the years, his foundation had worked tirelessly to bridge divides, whether through scholarships for underserved youth or funding projects that brought communities together. This moment felt like another opportunity to continue that mission. What struck Marcus most, however, was the irony of the situation. The terminal where the confrontation occurred wasn't just any building. It was a project funded in large part by his foundation. Millions of dollars had been poured into renovating the space, transforming it into a modern hub designed to welcome travelers from all walks of life. Marcus had envisioned it as a place of connection, inclusivity, and progress. Instead, it had become the backdrop for an ugly reminder of societal biases. But there was another layer to the irony that neither Marcus nor Monroe knew about yet. Unbeknownst to them, their lives were already intertwined in ways neither could imagine. Years earlier, Monroe's teenage son had applied for a scholarship program sponsored by Marcus's foundation. The program aimed to help students from low-income families pursue higher education, providing financial aid and mentorship opportunities. Monroe's son had been accepted, receiving the support he needed to attend college and pursue a degree in engineering. Thanks to that scholarship, the young man was now thriving, interning at a prestigious tech company and dreaming of a future filled with possibilities. Neither Monroe nor Marcus was aware of this connection, but it underscored the complexity of the situation. Two men, seemingly worlds apart, one wealthy and accomplished, the other struggling to make ends meet, were linked by shared values and efforts to improve lives. Yet, in that moment at the airport, those connections were invisible, overshadowed by prejudice and misunderstanding. As Marcus reflected on these thoughts, he decided it was time to take action. Ignoring the issue wouldn't solve anything, and lashing out wouldn't either. Instead, he chose a different path: dialogue. He drafted a statement addressing the incident, acknowledging the pain caused by Monroe's words while emphasizing the importance of understanding rather than punishment. "We live in a world where biases exist, sometimes unconsciously," he wrote. "But it's our responsibility to confront them, learn from them, and grow." The statement went viral almost instantly, drawing praise from leaders and activists alike. Many admired Marcus' willingness to rise above the conflict and focus on solutions. For Monroe, however, the backlash intensified. Online trolls attacked him relentlessly, labeling him as racist and unfit for his job. His family bore the brunt of the negativity, with strangers leaving cruel messages on social media accounts tied to his name. Feeling cornered and ashamed, Monroe withdrew into himself, unsure of how to navigate the storm surrounding him. Yet amidst the chaos, a glimmer of hope emerged. A local journalist reached out to Marcus, proposing a feature story on the broader implications of the incident. During their conversation, Marcus mentioned the scholarship program his foundation ran, explaining its goal of empowering underprivileged students. Intrigued, the journalist asked if Monroe's family might qualify for similar assistance. That question planted a seed in Marcus's mind. Perhaps this wasn't just about accountability. Perhaps it was also about reconciliation. Back at home, Monroe wrestled with guilt and regret. Images of the confrontation replayed in his mind, haunting him. He thought about his son, whose dreams had been made possible by programs like the ones Marcus supported. The realization hit him hard. The very system he'd criticized, and the person he'd wronged, had indirectly helped his family. It was a humbling revelation, forcing him to confront uncomfortable truths about privilege, perception, and systemic inequality. For both men, the journey was far from over. The airport incident had opened a door to difficult conversations, challenging them to look beyond surface-level perceptions and consider the deeper roots of their actions. While tensions still lingered, the seeds of change were beginning to sprout, promising a future where empathy could triumph over division. The aftermath of the airport incident continued to ripple outward, touching lives far beyond the initial confrontation between Marcus and Agent Monroe. As the days passed, the story dominated headlines, sparking debates about race, authority, and accountability in public spaces. For Marcus, the attention was overwhelming, but also an opportunity, a chance to address systemic issues that had long plagued society. Meanwhile, Agent Monroe faced mounting pressure from both his workplace and the court of public opinion. The weight of the situation bore down on him, forcing him to confront uncomfortable truths about himself and the world around him. Marcus's foundation became a focal point in the discussions. Reporters dug deeper into its history, uncovering stories of transformative projects it had funded, renovated schools, community centers, and scholarships for underprivileged students. These initiatives painted a picture of a man dedicated to uplifting others, someone who believed in creating opportunities where none existed before. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. Here was a man who had poured resources into improving public infrastructure, only to be treated poorly within one of those very spaces. It highlighted how deeply ingrained biases could persist even in environments meant to foster equality and connection. Social media played a pivotal role in amplifying these conversations. People shared personal anecdotes, recounting times they'd felt targeted or judged unfairly because of their race, appearance, or socioeconomic status. Others praised Marcus for his restraint during the encounter, calling him a model of grace under pressure. Some comments were less kind, criticizing Monroe's behavior as emblematic of broader societal problems. Online petitions calling for Monroe's termination gained traction, with thousands signing their names in protest. Amidst the noise, Monroe found himself increasingly isolated. His colleagues at the TSA avoided eye contact, unsure of what to say or how to act around him. Passengers glared at him as they passed through security checkpoints, whispering behind cupped hands. At home, his family bore the brunt of the backlash. His wife received hateful messages on social media, accusing her husband of perpetuating racism. Their teenage son, once proud of his achievements, now hesitated to mention his scholarship when asked about his education. The constant scrutiny took a toll on all of them, leaving Monroe feeling like he was drowning in a sea of judgment. Desperate for guidance, Monroe confided in his wife one evening. Sitting at their kitchen table, he buried his face in his hands and admitted, "I don't know how to fix this." His voice trembled with frustration and shame. "What I said, it was wrong. I see that now. But does everyone have to hate me for it?" His wife reached across the table, placing a comforting hand over his. "You're not a bad person," she said softly, "but you made a mistake and people are hurt because of it. Maybe it's time to listen, to really understand why this mattered so much to them." Her words struck a chord. Later that night, unable to sleep, Monroe pulled out his laptop and began reading articles about implicit bias and racial profiling. He watched videos of activists discussing the impact of small everyday actions on marginalized communities. Slowly, pieces of the puzzle started falling into place. He realized that his reaction toward Marcus hadn't been entirely about the slow walking. It had been fueled by unconscious assumptions he hadn't fully acknowledged until now. The more he learned, the heavier the guilt weighed on him. Meanwhile, Marcus decided it was time to take a stand. Despite calls for punitive measures against Monroe, he chose a different path, one rooted in compassion and understanding. In a carefully crafted statement, he emphasized the importance of addressing bias without resorting to punishment. "We cannot move forward as a society if we focus solely on blame," he wrote. "True progress requires empathy, education, and a willingness to learn from our mistakes." To demonstrate his commitment, Marcus announced plans to host a series of community dialogues aimed at fostering open conversations about bias and discrimination in public spaces. The announcement drew widespread support, with local leaders eager to participate. One city council member suggested holding the event at the same terminal where the incident occurred, turning the space into a symbol of healing rather than division. Marcus agreed, seeing it as a powerful way to reclaim the narrative. Flyers and advertisements promoted the dialogue sessions, inviting residents from diverse backgrounds to share their experiences and perspectives. The goal was simple: create a safe environment where people could speak honestly and listen actively. When the day of the first session arrived, the terminal buzzed with anticipation. Rows of chairs were set up near the main concourse, surrounded by banners displaying messages of unity and hope. Attendees ranged from college students to senior citizens, each bringing their own unique stories to the table. Marcus opened the event with a heartfelt speech, acknowledging the pain caused by incidents like the one involving Monroe while stressing the need for collective action. "This isn't about pointing fingers," he said. "It's about finding solutions together." As the dialogue unfolded, emotions ran high. A young black woman recounted being followed by store employees while shopping simply because of her skin color. An elderly white man confessed to feeling defensive whenever accused of harboring prejudice, even though he knew systemic racism existed. A Latina mother described the challenges her children faced in school due to language barriers. Each story added depth to the conversation, challenging participants to think critically about their roles in perpetuating or dismantling inequities. Then came Monroe's turn to speak. Encouraged by his wife and supervisor, he reluctantly stepped up to the microphone. The room fell silent as all eyes turned to him. Clutching the mic tightly, he cleared his throat and began. "First, I want to apologize," he said, his voice wavering. "To Mr. Howell and to everyone here tonight, I'm sorry for my behavior that day. I let my frustrations get the better of me, and I failed to treat someone with the respect they deserved. Looking back, I realize how my actions fit into a larger pattern of bias that hurts so many people." His words hung in the air, raw and unfiltered. For a moment, no one responded. Then slowly, applause broke out. Not everyone agreed with forgiving Monroe, but many appreciated his courage in facing the crowd and owning up to his mistakes. When he finished speaking, Marcus approached him, extending a hand. "Thank you for being here," Marcus said warmly. "This is just the beginning of a longer journey, but it's a step in the right direction." The handshake between the two men became a defining moment of the evening, captured by cameras and shared widely online. Critics argued that forgiveness shouldn't absolve Monroe of responsibility, while supporters hailed the gesture as proof that change was possible. Regardless of differing opinions, one thing was clear. The dialogue had planted seeds of understanding, encouraging people to reflect on their own biases and consider ways to build bridges instead of walls. For Monroe, the experience marked a turning point. No longer content to remain passive, he vowed to educate himself further and advocate for reforms within his workplace. He began attending workshops on cultural sensitivity and volunteered to mentor new TSA recruits, sharing lessons he'd learned along the way. Though the road ahead remained uncertain, he felt a renewed sense of purpose, a determination to ensure that no one else would feel the sting of prejudice under his watch. As the event concluded, Marcus stood near the exit, watching attendees file out. He felt a mix of exhaustion and hope. Change wouldn't happen overnight, but moments like this reminded him why he kept fighting, for a world where dignity and respect weren't privileges reserved for some, but rights afforded to all. The momentum from the community dialogue event didn't fade quickly. Instead, it sparked a ripple effect that touched lives far beyond the walls of the terminal where it had taken place. For Marcus Howell and Agent Greg Monroe, the encounter at the airport and the subsequent public reckoning had been more than just a moment of conflict. It became a catalyst for something greater. What began as an uncomfortable confrontation evolved into a shared mission to address biases and foster understanding within their community. In the weeks following the dialogue session, Marcus noticed a shift in how people approached him. Strangers stopped him on the street to express gratitude for his leadership and willingness to extend forgiveness. Local organizations invited him to speak at events about the importance of empathy and collaboration. Even TSA officials reached out asking if he'd be open to consulting on initiatives aimed at improving interactions between agents and travelers. It was clear that his actions had resonated deeply with many, inspiring others to think critically about their own roles in combating discrimination. For Agent Monroe, however, the journey wasn't as straightforward. While some praised his apology and participation in the dialogue, others remained skeptical. Critics argued that words alone weren't enough, that true accountability required tangible action. This criticism weighed heavily on Monroe, but rather than retreating into defensiveness, he chose to channel his energy into meaningful change. He began attending mandatory diversity training sessions provided by his employer, though he soon realized these programs often felt superficial and disconnected from real-world experiences. Determined to go deeper, he sought out additional resources, enrolling in workshops led by experts in cultural sensitivity and implicit bias. One such workshop proved particularly transformative. Held over a weekend, it brought together individuals from various professions, teachers, police officers, healthcare workers, all united by a desire to better understand the communities they served. During one exercise, participants were asked to share personal stories of privilege or prejudice. When it was Monroe's turn, he hesitated before speaking. His voice trembled as he recounted the airport incident, admitting how ashamed he felt when he realized the harm his actions had caused. To his surprise, the room erupted in supportive applause, not because they condoned what he'd done, but because they recognized the courage it took to stand there and admit fault. The experience left Monroe feeling empowered. For the first time since the incident, he saw a path forward, a way to turn regret into redemption. Inspired by what he'd learned, he proposed a new idea to his supervisors, creating a mentorship program within TSA to help agents develop stronger interpersonal skills. The goal would be to equip them with tools to de-escalate tense situations and approach passengers with greater empathy. Initially met with skepticism, Monroe persisted, presenting data and testimonials from his training sessions to support his case. Eventually, his persistence paid off, and the program received tentative approval. Marcus, meanwhile, continued expanding his foundation's reach. Recognizing the value of partnerships, he reached out to Monroe's team to explore ways they could collaborate. Together, they designed a pilot initiative focused on educating transportation workers about bias and fostering respectful interactions with travelers. The program included interactive workshops, role-playing exercises, and guest speakers who shared insights from their lived experiences. Marcus personally oversaw the project, ensuring it aligned with his vision of inclusivity and progress. As their preparations for the pilot program got underway, Marcus and Monroe found themselves working closely together for the first time. Their initial meetings were awkward, marked by lingering tension and unspoken emotions. But as they delved deeper into planning sessions, a sense of mutual respect began to emerge. Monroe admired Marcus's dedication and ability to inspire others, while Marcus appreciated Monroe's willingness to confront his mistakes and advocate for change. Over time, their professional relationship blossomed into a cautious friendship. Their collaboration drew national attention. News outlets picked up the story, highlighting the unlikely partnership between a billionaire philanthropist and a TSA agent once embroiled in controversy. Interviews aired on morning talk shows, featuring both men discussing the importance of accountability and growth. Viewers were moved by their honesty, particularly when Monroe admitted, "I used to think I was immune to bias. I thought I was doing my job the right way, but I was wrong, and owning up to that has changed everything for me." The pilot program launched at several major airports, receiving overwhelmingly positive feedback from participants. Agents reported feeling more confident in their ability to handle difficult situations with compassion. Travelers, too, noticed a difference, praising staff for their improved demeanor and attentiveness. One passenger wrote an online review saying, "For the first time, I felt seen and respected during security screening. It made a world of difference." Encouraged by the results, TSA leadership announced plans to expand the program nationwide. Back in their hometown, Marcus and Monroe became symbols of hope and reconciliation. They spoke at schools, community centers, and corporate events, sharing their story as a testament to the power of dialogue and forgiveness. Their message resonated across generations, reminding audiences that progress often starts with uncomfortable conversations. Children listened wide-eyed as Marcus described how small acts of kindness could lead to big changes, while adults nodded thoughtfully as Monroe emphasized the importance of self-reflection and accountability. Despite their newfound camaraderie, neither man forgot the weight of what had transpired. Marcus still remembered the sting of being singled out unfairly, while Monroe carried the memory of his harsh words. These reminders kept them grounded, fueling their commitment to creating a better future. They understood that healing wasn't linear. It required constant effort and humility, but they also knew they weren't alone in this journey. Countless others joined them, inspired by their example to tackle biases in their own lives. By the end of the year, the impact of their work was undeniable. Airports participating in the program reported fewer complaints from passengers, and employee morale among TSA agents soared. Community leaders credited Marcus and Monroe with sparking a broader movement toward inclusivity, not just within transportation systems, but across industries. Awards rolled in, recognizing their contributions to social justice and equality. Yet neither man cared much for accolades. What mattered most to them was the knowledge that they'd helped create a space where everyone could feel valued and respected. As Marcus stood in the renovated terminal one evening, watching families hurry to catch flights and friends reunite, after long journeys he felt a profound sense of fulfillment. This place, once the site of tension and division, now symbolized unity and progress. Beside him, Monroe gazed at the bustling crowd, marveling at how far they'd come since that fateful day. Together they had turned a painful chapter into a story of transformation, one that reminded the world of the boundless potential of human connection. The partnership between Marcus Howell and Greg Monroe didn't just transform their lives, it left an indelible mark on the world around them. What began as a single incident at an airport terminal evolved into a legacy of collaboration, empathy, and systemic change. Their journey became a blueprint for addressing biases in public spaces, inspiring countless others to confront uncomfortable truths and work toward solutions that benefited everyone. As months turned into years, the TSA mentorship program they helped create grew into a nationwide initiative. Airports across the country adopted its principles, embedding cultural sensitivity training into their standard protocols. Agents who once felt ill-equipped to handle tense situations now approached passengers with confidence and respect. The shift was subtle but significant. Fewer conflicts arose, and when they did, they were resolved more peacefully. Travelers noticed the difference too, often commenting on social media or in surveys about how much smoother and friendlier their experiences had become. Marcus's foundation played a pivotal role in scaling the program's success. Leveraging his resources and influence, he partnered with transportation agencies beyond airports, bus stations, train terminals, and even ride-sharing companies to implement similar initiatives. These efforts weren't limited to bias training. They extended to improving accessibility for people with disabilities, creating multilingual signage, and ensuring that all travelers felt welcome regardless of language or background. Each project reinforced Marcus's belief that public spaces should reflect the diversity of the communities they served. For Greg Monroe, the transformation was deeply personal. Once defined by frustration and defensiveness, he reinvented himself as an advocate for reform within TSA. His supervisors recognized his dedication, promoting him to a leadership role focused on employee development. In this capacity, Monroe traveled extensively, conducting workshops and mentoring agents eager to learn from his experience. He never shied away from sharing the story of his encounter with Marcus, using it as a teaching moment to illustrate the importance of self-awareness and accountability. Monroe's family also reaped the rewards of his growth. His teenage son, now nearing graduation, often joked that his dad had finally found his purpose. The young man, whose college education had been made possible by Marcus's scholarship program, pursued a degree in urban planning, a field inspired by the very projects his benefactor championed. When asked about his career goals, he spoke passionately about designing inclusive cities where no one felt marginalized. It was a full-circle moment, connecting the past to the future through shared values and aspirations. Back at the terminal, the physical space itself underwent further renovations under Marcus's guidance. Art installations celebrating local culture adorned the walls, while community events brought residents together in ways previously unimaginable. The terminal wasn't just a place for travel anymore. It was a hub of connection, creativity, and opportunity. Visitors marveled at how seamlessly functionality blended with inclusivity. unaware that every detail reflected Marcus's vision of progress. One evening, Marcus and Monroe met at the terminal to reflect on how far they'd come. Standing near the spot where their paths had first crossed, they took in the vibrant energy around them. Families laughed as children chased each other through the concourse. Musicians performed live music near the departure gates, drawing applause from appreciative crowds. Even the TSA checkpoint hummed with efficiency, agents greeting passengers warmly as they guided them through security. "It's hard to believe this is the same place," Monroe said, shaking his head in wonder. "If you'd told me back then what we'd accomplish, I wouldn't have believed it." Marcus smiled, leaning against a railing. "Neither would I," he admitted. "But here we are, and look at what we've built, not just physically but emotionally. People feel safe here. They belong here." Their conversation drifted to the challenges they'd faced along the way. There had been moments of doubt, setbacks, and resistance. Critics questioned whether their efforts were genuine or merely performative. Others argued that systemic issues couldn't be solved by individual actions alone. Yet Marcus and Monroe persevered, driven by the belief that small steps could lead to big changes over time. "You know," Marcus said thoughtfully, "this isn't just about us. It's about showing people that it's possible to move forward, even after making mistakes. You proved that, Greg. Your apology wasn't easy, but it opened doors none of us expected." Monroe nodded, his expression serious. "And your forgiveness gave me the chance to grow. Without that, I don't know where I'd be today." Their bond, forged in adversity, had blossomed into something rare and profound, a friendship built on mutual respect and shared purpose. They weren't perfect. They still disagreed occasionally, especially when brainstorming ideas for new projects, but their differences only strengthened their partnership. Each brought unique strengths to the table, complementing the other, in ways neither could have anticipated. As word of their collaboration spread, invitations poured in from organizations eager to replicate their model. Universities, corporations, and government agencies sought their advice on fostering inclusivity and addressing biases. Marcus and Monroe embraced these opportunities, traveling together to share their story and offer practical strategies for effecting change. Their message was simple yet powerful. Progress required vulnerability, humility, and a willingness to listen. In interviews, they often emphasize the importance of starting conversations, even uncomfortable ones. "It's not about having all the answers," Marcus explained during one panel discussion. "It's about asking the right questions. Why do certain groups feel excluded? What can we do differently? How can we make sure everyone feels valued?" Monroe echoed this sentiment, adding, "We're all human. We mess up sometimes, but the key is owning those mistakes and learning from them. That's how we grow, not just individually, but collectively." Their words resonated deeply, particularly among younger audiences. Students wrote essays inspired by their story, while aspiring leaders cited them as role models. A documentary filmmaker even approached them about creating a film chronicling their journey, hoping to inspire future generations to tackle societal challenges head-on. Though flattered by the attention, Marcus and Monroe remained grounded. They understood the true impact came not from recognition but from action. Every workshop they conducted, every policy they influenced, and every life they touched reminded them why they'd started this journey in the first place. Years later, when reflecting on their accomplishments, Marcus summed it up best. "This isn't the end of the road. It's just another beginning. There's always more work to do, more bridges to build. But if we keep listening, learning, and growing, there's no limit to what we can achieve." Standing side by side, surrounded by the bustling energy of the terminal, Marcus and Monroe knew they'd created something extraordinary. Together they had transformed a moment of conflict into a testament to the power of empathy, forgiveness, and collaboration. And as they walked away, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, they carried with them the hope that their story would continue to inspire others to seek understanding and to build a better, more inclusive world.